Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world where candlelight flickers on silk and time slows to the rhythm of your hand and needle. A day like any other in Constantinople, though you probably won't survive this if you're expecting constant excitement. Because tonight, you are just stitching. Row after row, thread after thread, in a workshop where the air is thick with beeswax and old wood. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, what city are you in, and what time are you listening? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit hunched on a low stool, a square of crimson silk stretched before you, the fabric shimmering like liquid wine. Your needle dips, rises, dips again, each movement so small and so steady that hours blur like melted wax on a taper. The workshop is quiet, except for the faint scrape of shears on cloth and the muffled cough of another embroiderer across the room. You smell oil smoke, faint garlic from someone's earlier meal, and the dry tang of linen thread that frays no matter how carefully you pull. Historians still argue whether the Byzantine silk monopoly was genius economics or just overbearing bureaucracy. But for you, it means every scrap of this shimmering thread is precious. One dropped skein could cost more than a farmer earns in a season. The silk itself has traveled farther than you ever will, smuggled first out of China by monks who supposedly carried silkworm eggs hidden in hollow canes. That story might be apocryphal, but you picture it anyway. Little secret passengers wriggling their way into imperial glory. A quirkier tale you whisper to yourself. Some say the first Byzantine dyers tried coloring silk with beet juice before discovering the famous Tyrian purple, made from thousands of crushed sea snails. Imagine the disappointment. Behold, your majesty, robes of slightly pink salad stain. You stifle a grin, the joke breaking the monotony for a heartbeat. Your eyes burn as you focus on a golden thread that refuses to stay flat. You spit lightly on your fingers to smooth it, an old trick passed down in the guild, though the guild masters insist the proper way involves damp sponges and reverence. The truth? Spit works faster. You wonder how long you've been here. An hour? 2? Time is elastic when the only markers are knots tied, patterns completed, the rare moment when a candle sputters and must be replaced. Shadows creep up the workshop walls, stretching your bent form until you look like some mythical creature, half spider, half monk. And yet, there is a rhythm to it. Needle in, needle out, thread tight, thread slack. Your whole body hums with the pattern until you no longer notice the aches in your shoulders or the stiffness in your knees. Just the work, just the silk, just the endless stream of stitches that tether you to the empire's great pageantry. By the 10th minute, your thoughts drift toward the larger banners stacked in the corner, commissions waiting for parades, perhaps even for the emperor himself to ride beneath. You imagine the banners unfurling in the wind, each stitch you've made lost in a blur of gold and crimson. 1,000 tiny acts of labor, swallowed into spectacle. You sigh, and at last whisper, maybe you should like this video and subscribe, because even emperors rely on the invisible hands that no one ever notices. The needle waits in your hand, catching the glow of the workshop's wavering candles. It is not just a sliver of bone or brass. It feels almost alive after so many hours of use, its polished shaft, smooth from fingers like yours that have pressed and pinched and guided it through stubborn silk. The tools around you are few, but they are your companions in this dim chamber, where the air forever smells of beeswax and damp stone. Shears with blades so sharp they can split a hair. Wooden spindles wound with golden thread that glint like strands of sunlight trapped indoors. And all for pricking patterns into cloth. Even a bone needle case with its tiny lid, carved long ago by someone whose name is gone. You slide the needle through silk again, hear the faint hiss as it pierces, and wonder, as you often do, how many lives have been measured in the wear of a single tool. You hold the shears carefully, knowing one slip could ruin not just your work, but the work of everyone else at the bench. Each tool is both weapon and salvation, and you know which one you'd prefer if it came to a fight. Joke number 1 tonight. If you were ever caught in a street brawl, you'd pick the shears first. At least they're already sharp, unlike your wit. The Byzantines are famous for their silk, but what the average merchant or pilgrim doesn't know is how strict the controls are. The empire guards this craft like a dragon hoarding treasure. Only certain guilds are permitted to weave or embroider for imperial commissions, and the punishments for smuggling silk out of Constantinople can be as harsh as exile, or worse, depending on which emperor is currently in a foul mood. Historians still argue whether the monopoly on silk was motivated more by revenue, by political display, or by the sheer joy of micromanaging subjects' wardrobes. The work table before you is stained with centuries of use, rings of oil, wax droplets, and faint scratches where others have measured patterns with knives. You adjust your seat on the creaking stool and set the golden spindle upright. Gold thread is the most temperamental of your materials. Flat strips of gilded metal wound around a core of silk, prone to kinking if pulled too tight. The trick is to couch it, laying the gold on top and tacking it down with invisible stitches of fine silk. It looks effortless when complete, like molten rays of sun. Yet you know the hours hidden inside. Your fingers ache as you pinch the thread, tug, and flatten. You remember once hearing a master boast that the Virgin Mary herself would recognize his stitching from across a church nave. You suspect the Virgin has better things to do than inspect thread count, but you admire the bravado. You smooth another golden length across crimson fabric, eyes watering under the candle's smoke. Quirky tidbit to keep your brain awake. Some artisans swore that the sheen of silk responded better when the embroiderer's breath was calm. Too much sighing, they said, dulled the colors. You've never tested the theory, but here you are, breathing slowly, half because of superstition, and half because you're too tired to exhale any faster. Around you, the workshop is alive with tiny sounds. A cough, a sniff, the dull thump of someone dropping their shears onto wood. A muttered curse when thread tangles. It is communal silence, like monks chanting without words. The tools are extensions of your bodies, each one moving with quiet rhythm. When a spindle tips over, rolling across the floor, it is as dramatic as thunder. You pause, letting your eyes rest, and glance at your collection of tools. Each one has its story. The shears were forged by an Armenian smith, or so the merchant claimed, though how one proves such provenance is anyone's guess. The spindle once cracked when dropped, but you bound it with a strip of linen, and it still works, though a little uneven. The awl you borrowed years ago and never returned. Perhaps it once belonged to a rival workshop. You reflect, half seriously, on how tools are like people. Some sharp, some dull, some prone to breaking under stress, and some, like your favorite spindle, a little damaged, but still dependable. There's your second joke tonight. You and that spindle have the same personality, both held together by string. both still working despite the odds. A candle sputters beside you, wax running down like a crooked timeline. You pinch the wick, relight it with another, and sit back down. The needle feels heavy now, but it is the heart of your craft. Without it, you'd be nothing more than another laborer hauling bricks. With it, you are part of the Empire's grand illusion. Silk banners fluttering above parades, priests draped in shimmering vestments, emperors dazzling foreign envoys. Every stitch you make is invisible from afar, but together they create a spectacle powerful enough to awe ambassadors into treaties or terrify enemies into surrender. Historians still debate whether the Byzantine state truly believed in the sacred power of embroidered images or merely used them as propaganda. Was a cross on a banner an object of devotion, or just a flashy way to remind soldiers whose empire they fought for? You wonder yourself as you stitch yet another loop, another line, repeating patterns that may be read as holy or merely decorative. Your fingers cramp, and you shake them out, flexing slowly. You rub your palm against the table, pressing into the grooves cut by past embroiderers. The sensation grounds you, reminding you that countless hands before yours have sat here, bent over silk, muttering curses, stifling yawns. A whole lineage of anonymous artisans, forgotten names behind the shimmering legacy of Byzantium. The candlelight gleams off the shears again, and you realize they need sharpening. Tomorrow, perhaps, you'll slip out to find a knife grinder on the street, the man who pushes his whetstone cart and whistles between customers. You smile at the thought, an excuse to leave the workshop for a few breaths of air. Your third joke for tonight. If heaven really rewards good deeds, your eternity will be spent sharpening tools for other people, because that seems to be your actual calling. And so the hours slide past. Tools in hand, thread in motion, you become less a person than a machine of fabric and faith. You think of the empire as a loom itself, weaving soldiers, priests, peasants, and emperors into a pattern that somehow holds despite fraying edges. Your contribution is small, a needle scratch in a vast tapestry, yet without it, the whole design might unravel. Your eyes close for a moment longer than a blink, and when they open again, the pattern before you has shifted slightly in shadow. A reminder that the night is young, the work unending, and the tools, faithful, familiar, are ready to guide you through the next length of golden thread. The silk lies in your lap like a captive river, shimmering under candlelight, with colors not born in this city. Each thread you touch has a journey longer than your own life. You tug gently, and the fabric seems to sigh with the weight of distance traveled. You know, though you try not to think too much about it, that this piece of cloth began far beyond the mountains of Anatolia, far beyond Persia, even beyond India. The silkworms that birthed this glimmering thread once lived among mulberry trees in the valleys of China. Their delicate cocoons unwound into skeins so fine they could slip through a ring. From there, caravans of merchants carried it westward, each step of the Silk Road a gamble with bandits, deserts, and endless taxation. You hear stories, half whispered in the workshop, of how silkworms first came to Byzantium. The tale goes that two monks, traveling from the east, smuggled the secret in hollow canes, each packed with eggs hidden from customs and suspicious guards. Whether true or not, the empire treats the story as gospel. Historians still argue whether it was truly monks or some nameless smuggler who risked everything. But the result remains the same. Constantinople controls the silk, and by extension, controls beauty itself. You smooth the crimson square stretched on your frame. Threads of blue and green lie coiled at your side, but it is the gold that catches your eye. Always the gold, wound in little loops, heavy enough to bend spindles. When you stitch with it, you feel as though you're stitching sunlight into the fabric, weaving a fragment of heaven onto banners that will one day flutter before emperors and armies. And yet, in your hands, the gold feels stubborn, metallic, refusing to yield. It curls and kinks as if reminding you, this is wealth, and wealth resists control. Sometimes you think about the caravans that carried these silks. Imagine a long line of camels trudging across sand, bells jingling faintly in the desert wind. The merchants may have passed through Samarkand, where turquoise domes glimmer, or through Baghdad, where scholars read Aristotle under lanterns. By the time the skeins arrive here, in your humble workshop, the threads have touched worlds you will never see. Your job is simply to pin them down, to transform their wandering nature into rigid banners for a stationary empire. There's a curious tidbit you once overheard from a sailor who drank too much wine in a tavern. He swore that silkworms preferred music. He claimed Chinese farmers played flutes by the mulberry groves, so the worms spun stronger cocoons. You suspect he confused silkworms with his own fondness for song, but the idea lingers. Sometimes, when the workshop grows too quiet, you hum to the threads, half as a joke, half in case the worms really are listening from beyond time. Another stitch, another loop. The pattern is taking shape now, a border of interlaced vines surrounding a central emblem. Your shoulders ache, but you push on. The empire demands perfection, and perfection requires hours, sometimes days, of invisible labor. Still, you wonder, who first decided that silk should be sacred? Was it simply the sheen, that glimmer like moonlight on water? Or was it the rarity, the fact that only a handful of people could afford it? Historians still debate whether silk's power came from its material beauty or from the human hunger for exclusivity. Either way, here you sit, enslaved not by chains, but by thread. Your needle snags slightly, catching on a knot, and you sigh. Knots are the enemy. One wrong pull, and the whole design puckers, a permanent scar in fabric that should look effortless. You pick it apart carefully, fingernails scraping the fibers. The candle trembles as a draft slips through the stone walls, and you freeze for a moment, praying the flame does not gutter out. Shadows stretch long over your workbench, dancing like cloaked spirits. The workshop door creaks open, and someone passes by in the corridor beyond. The faint smell of roasting fish enters, and your stomach growls. You think of the caravans again, how merchants feasted on dried meat and flatbread, how they traded silk for pepper and glass. Every strand in your hands is a silent record of negotiation, compromise, risk. Silk is never just cloth. It is the memory of men bargaining under tents, the echo of coins clinking, the fear of thieves in the night. You lean closer, nose nearly brushing the fabric, as you guide the needle along the outline. Your breath fogs faintly in the cold room. You wonder, half seriously, whether your spit and sighs are becoming part of the cloth. Joke number 1 of this section. Somewhere out there, an emperor might be marching beneath a banner that contains more of your saliva than he would care to know. The hours stretch. You pause to flex your fingers, rubbing your knuckles. Your tools wait in silence, their edges catching stray sparks of light. The gold thread gleams again, tempting you to abandon the crimson and focus only on the shine. Yet discipline wins. The guild insists every stitch follow the pattern exactly. No improvisation. You are a servant to symmetry, chained not by iron, but by geometry. Still, part of you rebels. You imagine sneaking a tiny flourish into the banner, a hidden bird, a small curl of vine shaped like your initials. No one would notice, not from the street. Historians still argue whether artisans ever dared such secret rebellion, or if every stitch was policed into anonymity. You like to believe some dared. Perhaps centuries from now, someone will hold up a scrap of silk, trace an odd little curve, and whisper, "Here was a human hand." The workshop clock, a heavy water clock with its steady dripping, marks another slow interval. Each drop echoes in your ears, as if the empire itself ticks away one drop at a time. Drop it. You tug another thread, secure another knot. Time is measured not by hours, but by completed motifs, by borders finished, by patterns filled. The candle burns low. You shift in your seat, bones stiff, and peer at your progress. Half a border done. It seems nothing, yet already, countless miles of silk thread have passed through your fingers. You try to picture how many silkworms that represents. Hundreds? Thousands? Each cocoon, a tiny tomb for a creature boiled alive so the thread could be unwound. There's your second joke. You're basically running a worm graveyard, except the headstones are banners, and the ghosts are silent but shiny. The thought lingers, sobering you. Silk is luxury born of death, though few choose to say it aloud. The worms die so emperors may shine. You too give your life thread by thread, hour by hour, so that your work may dazzle at ceremonies you will never attend. The door creaks again. A fellow worker mutters a prayer as he leaves, his sandals scuffing the stone. You glance at the flickering shadows, then return to your work. The threads blur for a moment, eyes straining, but you continue. There is no choice. And so the night deepens. You stitch not just silk, but the memory of journeys, the desert winds, the caravan bells, the hidden canes of monks smuggling eggs. Your hands anchor all those stories into the fabric, binding faraway worlds to this one square of crimson. By the time dawn arrives, you will have stitched hundreds of times, and yet the world outside will see only one thing: the empire's glory. Third joke, before you forget. If the worms truly listen to music, perhaps tomorrow you'll sing off key just to annoy them. After all, you deserve some amusement. You sigh, smooth the thread once more, and let the gold catch the light. It shines back at you like a patient sun, waiting to be harnessed, waiting to be claimed. And you, bone needle in hand, prepare to continue the endless task of making silk obey. The banner before you is not just any cloth. It is an imperial commission, ordered from the palace itself. The kind of assignment that makes your shoulders tense with pride and dread at the same time. Every stitch is meant to be seen, judged, and carried in public, fluttering in processions that weave through Constantinople's great streets. The emperor, or at least his stern-eyed officials, will expect nothing less than perfection, because this is not fabric, it is spectacle. You thread your needle again, tugging the silk taut across the wooden frame. The pattern is laid out in faint chalk lines, a network of vines and geometric forms that will eventually surround the central image. It is not your place to decide that image. It has been decreed. For this honor, it is the double-headed eagle, symbol of Byzantine dominion. Two eyes scanning east and west, a bird that claims to guard the empire's horizons. Historians still argue whether the eagle truly emerged from ancient Roman iconography, or if Byzantines borrowed and reshaped it from Persian symbols. But for you, it is simply a pattern you must bring to life. The workshop feels different when an imperial piece is on the frame. The usual gossip is hushed, laughter scarce. Each worker knows that inspectors may arrive at any time. Even the air seems heavier, as if the stones in the wall themselves are watching your progress. You shift on your stool and let out a slow breath, trying not to think about the consequences of failure. There is, of course, pride in the task. Your stitches will march in parades, pass under the eyes of crowds, shimmer under the sun as soldiers lift the banner high. Your work will travel farther than you ever will, its threads rippling in winds across provinces. You imagine an envoy from Venice watching it and whispering to himself, "Yes, this empire still holds power." You imagine peasants gazing up at it during a church festival thinking, "This empire is blessed." In truth, your work is propaganda. Gentle, glittering propaganda sewn into every loop of thread. Still, you find yourself smiling at a quirk of the design. The eagle's feathers are outlined with golden thread, but the chalk lines are so faint that in certain light you see instead a lopsided chicken staring back at you. Joke number 1 tonight. If you misstitch the beak, Constantinople will march beneath the proud chicken of the Romans. Not quite the image of power the emperor intended. You lean closer, guiding the gold across crimson silk. The thread glints, alive under candlelight, and you couch it carefully, anchoring it with tiny stitches of green. The hours crawl. The eagle's wing takes shape, but your shoulders ache and your knees lock. You pause to roll them out, listening to the creak of the stool beneath you. The empire's commissions are strict. You recall one tale, whispered by a journeyman, of an entire workshop fined heavily because a banner was finished with the wrong shade of blue. Whether true or not, the story haunts you. Historians still argue whether the Byzantine court actually enforced such rigid standards, or if these stories were merely cautionary myths spread by guildmasters to keep apprentices obedient. Either way, you do not risk improvisation. Every color, every angle, every curve must be exact. Your tools feel heavier under the weight of expectation. The shears, the spindles, the bone needle, they are no longer humble companions, but instruments of judgment. You adjust your grip on the needle, sweat dampening your fingers, and pray the gold thread will not kink. Each time it does, you smooth it carefully, whispering small comforts to the stubborn strip of metal, as though it might listen. The other workers shift restlessly. One clears his throat. Another mutters a prayer. Somewhere, far in the corridor, you hear the tramp of boots. Inspectors? You glance up, heart quickening, but the sound passes by. Relief seeps through you, though it is temporary. You know they will come eventually. They always do. You remember a quirky tidbit told by an older embroiderer. During one festival centuries ago, an imperial banner accidentally caught fire from a nearby torch. Rather than disgrace themselves by halting the procession, the bearers kept marching, smoke billowing like incense, until the cloth disintegrated entirely. The emperor declared it a sign from heaven and ordered more banners immediately. Joke number 2 tonight. Imagine being the poor artisan who stitched that doomed cloth. Months of work gone in 5 minutes, praised only for the dramatic way it burned. You return to your stitches, steadying your hands. The eagle's body fills slowly, feather by feather. The work is repetitive, but exacting. Every pass of the needle a silent oath to loyalty. You tell yourself it is just thread, just fabric, yet the weight of empire presses against your spine. The candle guttering beside you seems symbolic. Its flame bends low, its wax spilling across the table like molten rivers. You replace it with another, watching as the new flame leaps to life, steady and bright. You think of the banner itself as a flame, fleeting, dependent on human labor, but projected as eternal by those in power. Historians still argue whether the Byzantine state genuinely believed in divine sanction for its symbols, or merely used them as dazzling tools of control. Your fingers cramp. You stretch them again, glancing toward the small window slit high in the wall. Through it, you catch a glimpse of the night sky. Stars glimmer faintly, distant and indifferent. You return to the eagle, guiding the golden wing upward. The chalk lines fade as the stitches grow, until the pattern is no longer a ghost, but a living creature, shimmering under lamplight. Joke number 3 slips from your lips as you sigh. If you spend one more hour on this eagle, you might start seeing it flap its wings and fly out the window, leaving you with only the chicken sketch behind. The thought almost makes you laugh, though your throat is dry. The hours slip by. The banner grows, thread by thread, into the shape decreed by the palace. You wonder briefly whether the emperor himself will ever glance at your work. Perhaps he will. Perhaps he won't. Perhaps he will march beneath it without a thought, while you, nameless, faceless, sit here in the shadows. Every stitch of his glory carved into your memory. The eagle's talons begin to take form under your needle. Sharp, curling, menacing, they clutch at nothing and everything. You pause, considering the irony. You stitch claws of domination with cramped, aching hands that clutch your own tools. The empire's symbol of strength is, in truth, built on the exhaustion of people like you. The candles burn lower. The workshop is silent except for the faint scrape of thread against silk. You breathe. You stitch. You obey the chalk lines. The eagle grows, steady and patient, its wings stretching wider, its gaze forever doubled, east and west. By the time you set down your needle, you know it will look perfect. Perfect enough to hide the fact that your back is bent, your eyes sting, and your name will never be remembered. The banner will march. The eagle will fly. The empire will shine. And you will stitch, again and again, until thread or flesh gives out. Hours pass, though you no longer measure them with the dripping of the workshop's water clock. Instead, you measure them in stitches, hundreds, then thousands, each one pulling you deeper into the hypnotic rhythm of needle through silk, silk through needle. Your shoulders ache, your back bends like a bow, and yet the banner grows, its eagle wings stretching wider across the crimson cloth. The true battle of embroidery, though, is not strength, but endurance. Needle and thread seem innocent enough, but when you spend entire days staring at lines no wider than a hair, your body begins to rebel. The ache creeps first into your eyes, then into your spine, then down into your hands, until each movement feels like lifting a stone. You blink against the candlelight, eyes burning as though you've stared into the sun. Joke number 1 tonight. At this point, you'd welcome blindness if only to excuse yourself from one more stitch. You rub your eyes with the back of your hand and squint at the banner again. The eagle looks magnificent, at least from this close distance, but the details blur when your eyes tire. You know that if you make one mistake, a twisted feather, a misplaced talon, the whole pattern could be ruined. Historians still argue whether the Byzantines employed assistants purely to correct errors, or whether every artisan was expected to work flawlessly from start to finish. Whatever the truth, you know there is no one to fix your mistakes here. You stretch your shoulders, hearing a faint crack that feels far louder in the silence. The other embroiderers at their benches shift uneasily, as if your bones dared to protest against the Empire's demands. You glance at them briefly, each one hunched, each one blinking, each one locked in the same slow duel with fatigue. The workshop feels less like a place of art and more like a monastery of endurance, where the needle is scripture and your eyes are candles burning themselves out. The lamp sputters and flares, throwing harsh shadows across the cloth. You lean back, sighing, and trace the gold thread with one finger. It gleams as though mocking you, bright and tireless. You try to joke to yourself, second joke of this section, that if the threads can glow for centuries in church processions, they could at least glow kindly enough now to help you see without blinding yourself. The humor is thin, but it keeps you from collapsing into despair. You think about the cost of such labor. Silk itself is expensive, of course, but the real price is hours of human life. Each feather on the eagle's wing represents minutes of blurred vision. Each curve of gold is an ache in your hand that will linger long after the banner leaves this room. You imagine the nobles who will parade beneath this banner, their eyes glittering with pride, their lips praising divine craftsmanship. Not one of them will think of your cramped knuckles or your sleepless nights. Historians still debate whether Byzantine artisans were considered honored craftsmen or simply replaceable laborers under guild control. Some sources suggest artisans were respected, even envied, while others hint that they were treated as mere instruments of imperial display. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in between, praised when convenient, forgotten once the banner unfurled. Your thread snags again. You curse softly, though the word is swallowed in the dim air. You pick at the knot, easing it apart, careful not to tear the silk. Knots are the enemy. They remind you how fragile everything is. Hours of work ruined by a twist of thread, months of labor destroyed by a single misplaced flame. The Empire may appear invincible in its mosaics and domes, but here, on your lap, its glory dangles by threads no thicker than spider silk. A faint draft passes through the workshop, and you shiver. You imagine the sea winds outside, the Bosporus waters glittering under starlight. Somewhere out there, ships bob against the docks, their sails folded, their crews asleep. Life beyond the workshop feels distant, unreachable, like another world entirely. You blink, return to the eagle's wing, and stitch again. The silence presses down on you, heavy as stone. You try to distract yourself with a memory. The guildmaster once claimed that staring at silk too long could drive a person half mad, seeing phantom patterns everywhere. You laughed then, but now you wonder. When you close your eyes, even for a blink, you see threads shimmering against the dark, spiraling into shapes that don't exist. Joke number 3 tonight. If madness comes, at least you'll be surrounded by the softest hallucinations in history. You stitch on. The hours dissolve. Each motion is automatic. Thread, pull, tighten, smooth. You forget where your body ends and the needle begins. The eagle's feathers grow more complete, the chalk outlines disappearing under gold. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm. Inhale, stitch, exhale, knot. It feels almost sacred, though no priest is here to bless it. Perhaps the blessing lies in repetition itself. Your hand trembles once, betraying you, and the needle slips. It scratches your fingertip, a tiny prick, barely more than an annoyance. You watch a bead of red swell, dark against the gold. You suck it away quickly, not daring to let it stain the fabric. You mutter to yourself that even emperors would recoil if they knew their glorious banners drank the blood of exhausted embroiderers. It is true, though no one will ever admit it. The night deepens, the water clock drips steadily, unbothered by human struggle. You stitch more, slower now, but steady. You glance at your fellow workers again. One has fallen asleep at his bench, head nodding dangerously close to the candle. Another rubs his temples, whispering prayers into his hands. You all move like shadows, half alive, half asleep, bound together by the empire's need for perfection. The eagle grows larger, its body filling with shining detail. The more it takes form, the less you feel like its creator, and the more you feel like its captive. Its double heads seem to glare at you, one east, one west, both unblinking. You wonder if perhaps it is not a symbol of empire at all, but a warning to artisans. Two heads to watch you, to ensure you never stray from the pattern. Your eyes sting again, watering against the smoke. You pause to blink, to stretch your fingers, to rub your aching back. The banner waits. Always it waits. You sigh, thread your needle again, and return to the endless task. By the time you finally lean back, exhausted, the eagle's wing gleams complete under the lamplight. The feathers ripple as though alive, though you know it is only the flicker of flame. You press your sore fingers into your palm and breathe. Tomorrow, there will be more. Tomorrow, you will return to the same stool, the same tools, the same aching rhythm. But for now, you have given the empire another piece of its glory, one stitch at a time. The silence of the workshop never lasts forever. As your needle dips and rises, you hear the faintest rustle. Two workers whispering in the corner, voices lowered though the walls here carry every sound. At first you ignore them, focusing on the eagle's wing, still gleaming beneath your lamp. But the murmur grows, spilling into little bursts of laughter, then hushed tension. You cannot help but listen. In a place like this, gossip is as necessary as bread. The guild rules, they say, are tightening again. The price of silk, already steep, is climbing higher, and the guild masters are quarreling about who will pay the difference, the artisans or the nobles. Someone mutters that a workshop down by the docks was fined for attempting to buy cheaper thread from an Armenian trader. Another voice whispers that inspectors demanded bribes to overlook tiny flaws in a banner. Joke number one tonight. You wish you had the courage to stitch a bribe directly into the fabric. Gold coins couched under silk feathers, invisible until the right hands know where to look. The Byzantine guild system is both cage and shield. On one hand, it grants you protection. No artisan may sell silk without belonging to the guild, and foreign merchants must pass through guild hands. On the other, it binds you tighter than your own stitches, setting fees, dictating patterns, even choosing who may advance. Historians still argue whether guilds were true advocates for workers or tools of imperial control. But for you, the effect is simple. You are owned twice, once by your craft, and once by the men who rule it. One of the older women at her bench hisses suddenly, snapping her thread in frustration. She mutters that the guild masters grow fat on fees, while her children go hungry. Her neighbor cautions her to hush, reminding her that walls have ears, and ears have punishments. You bend lower over your work, pretending not to hear, though every word slices deeper than your needle. There is talk, too, of rivalries between workshops. The guild may present a united face to the empire, but within its walls, competition festers. Who will win the most commissions? Who will curry favor with inspectors? Who will boast that their banner fluttered before the emperor at Hagia Sophia? You've seen the pride on those artisans' faces, as though they themselves carried the processions on their shoulders. Joke number 2 tonight. You once overheard a man claim his banner kept the rain from falling during a ceremony. His stitches, apparently, held power over the clouds. Your own pride is quieter, hidden under layers of silk. You do not boast, but you remember. You remember when one of your earlier works hung behind the altar of a small church, the candles flickering against it as the priest swung his censer. You stood in the shadows, listening to the chants, watching your stitches shimmer in the incense haze. No one knew your name, but for a moment, you felt as though the saints themselves glanced down in approval. The whispers in the workshop continue. Someone suggests that the guild's monopoly is slipping. Foreign traders, Venetians and Genoese, are buying favors in the city, smuggling silks through back channels. If true, the guild's power could weaken, but others scoff. No one dares defy the emperor's decree. Smuggling is punishable by confiscation, exile, perhaps worse. Historians still debate whether such smuggling was widespread or merely rumor. But every artisan here knows the fear is real. The empire does not forgive those who steal its shine. You prick your finger again, wincing at the sting. You suck at the bead of blood before it can touch the silk. A fellow worker notices, smirks, and murmurs that you should charge the guild for your sacrifices. You return the smirk, whispering that if blood counted as ink, your name would already be written across the city's walls. Your body aches, but your ears hunger for distraction. You lean into the gossip more, piecing together fragments. There are rumors of bribes exchanged in coins hidden inside loaves of bread. Stories of workshops caught using cheaper dyes, walnut instead of the sacred purple, and punished with public shame. One tale claims that a master once tried to disguise a mistake by stitching over it with darker thread, only for the flaw to show in the sunlight. The banner was torn apart before the crowd, his name disgraced. Joke number 3 tonight. You imagine the poor man sighing. Well, at least the flaw made it into the parade. My work finally stood out. The talk grows bolder as fatigue loosens tongues. Someone wonders aloud why the emperor himself needs so many banners. How many eagles, how many crosses, how many saints must be stitched before the empire feels secure? The question hangs in the air like smoke. No one answers. Perhaps no one dares. Your needle dips again, guiding the gold across crimson. The whispers fade back into silence, each artisan retreating into their own labor. The workshop hums with quiet tension, a thread stretched too tight. You exhale slowly, shoulders sagging, and let the rhythm of stitching pull you back from the edge of unease. You think about the guild masters in their fine robes, strutting through the quarter as though they themselves embroidered every banner. You picture them at feasts, cups of wine raised high, boasting of guild loyalty, while artisans hunch in smoke-filled rooms. Historians still argue whether the guilds truly protected the craft's integrity, or simply turned workers into cogs in a gilded machine. To you, the answer is already stitched into your palms. The guild feeds on your labor, but without it, you would be trampled by rivals and foreigners. The candlelight dances again across the eagle's wings. You pause to rub your eyes, to roll your stiff neck. Your back aches, your shoulders knot, but you push forward. You stitch not just for the emperor, not just for the guild, but for yourself. For the stubborn pride of making something that will outlast your body. The whispers around you fade, but their echo remains, reminding you that even in silence, the guild looms. And so the night drags on. Needle, thread, gossip, silence. A cycle as old as the guild itself. You are trapped in it, yet you endure, because endurance is the true art here. Not the eagle, not the Veets, not the saints, but the quiet persistence of hands that keep moving, even when the world outside stirs with politics and rumor. Tomorrow, perhaps, inspectors will arrive. Tomorrow, perhaps, the guild will change its rules again. But tonight, the only thing that matters is the golden thread sliding through crimson silk, binding you to empire, to guild, to history itself. The air of the workshop grows heavy, thick with the stale smoke of lamps and the musk of worn bodies. After hours of bending over the same crimson cloth, your lungs crave something fresher, something that does not smell of beeswax and sweat. At last, when the overseer's attention drifts elsewhere, you push back from the stool, flex your stiff legs, and slip quietly toward the narrow door. The hinges complain faintly as you open it, but no one stops you. Everyone here knows the rhythm. Too long at the bench, and your hands lose their steadiness. Even the empire allows a few minutes to breathe. The street outside greets you with a sudden chorus of life. Day has bled into late afternoon, and the city hums with its usual chaos. Constantinople is never still, never silent. You step out into the hum of the market, and it feels as though you've wandered into another world entirely. Instead of silence, there is shouting. Instead of candle smoke, there is the pungent bite of fish, the sweetness of figs, the sour tang of pickled cabbage fermenting in jars. A fishmonger bellows his prices so loudly that the gulls overhead seem to echo him. His hands, slick with scales, slap against wooden boards as he holds up glistening mackerel. Nearby, a fig seller waves a basket beneath passers-by's noses, the fruit's sugary aroma cloying in the warm air. The cries overlap, weaving into a rhythm that almost feels musical. Almost. Joke number 1 tonight. If merchants sang their prices instead of shouting them, Constantinople could put on an opera every afternoon. You drift into the crowd, cloak pulled tight around your shoulders, your fingers still tingling from hours of stitching. The market stalls crowd close together, their awnings flapping, their tables sagging beneath heaps of olives, bread loaves, and jars of honey. Voices rise and fall. Children dart between legs. Dogs nose through scraps. It is chaos, yes, but it is also freedom compared to the measured discipline of your workshop. Historians still argue whether Byzantine markets were truly open to all or subtly segregated by wealth and class. From where you stand, the answer seems obvious. Nobles sweep through with servants carrying their purchases, while beggars crouch at corners, hands outstretched, ignored by all but the most pious. You step past them, heart heavy, but your own purse holds too few coins to share. You are not noble, not rich, only another thread in the fabric of the city. You pause before a stall where a baker fans hot bread, steam rising from the cracked crusts. The smell is heavenly, sharp with sesame. You hand over a coin, receive a small loaf, and tear it carefully. The crust crunches beneath your teeth, scattering crumbs that the pigeons fight over instantly. The bread fills your stomach, but also seems to ground you, reminding you of simpler things than golden thread and imperial decrees. The market is more than noise and food. It is also rumor. As you chew, you overhear snatches of conversation. One sailor claims he has seen Latin crusaders gathering ships farther west. Another insists taxes will rise again to pay for fortifications. A woman complains that her husband spends more time drinking with guild friends than working. The voices overlap, each one carrying truths and half-truths, stitched together into the city's living tapestry. A quirky tidbit floats from a nearby spice merchant, who boasts that he sells pepper that can cure melancholy, cinnamon that ensures faithfulness, and saffron that guarantees sweet dreams. You grin, thinking of your endless nights bent over silk. Perhaps a pinch of saffron in your supper would indeed grant the sleep you never seem to find. Joke number 2 tonight. If saffron really gave sweet dreams, you'd embroider entire pillows with it and retire early. The market hum has its own rhythm. A beggar's chant repeats. A vendor claps his hands. A donkey brays stubbornly as its owner tugs it forward. The smells blend together. Frying fish, hot bread, sharp vinegar. The faint metallic tang of coins passed hand to hand. You breathe it all in, feeling the city seep into your pores. This, too, is Constantinople, the empire's true heart, louder than its palaces, more enduring than its laws. You wander a little farther, past a man selling candles shaped like saints, past a woman displaying dyed cloths that shimmer pale compared to the silks you handle daily. A boy shouts the price of figs until his voice cracks, then collapses into giggles. The street narrows, pressed by walls leaning close, their plaster peeling in the salt air. You step aside as a cart rattles past, its wheels splashing through a puddle, drenching your hem. Historians still debate whether the city's markets were organized with any true logic, or whether they thrived purely through chaos. Looking around, you suspect chaos rules here. The fishmongers crowd beside spice sellers, cloth merchants jostle with potters, and beggars linger at every turn. Yet somehow it works. People eat, people trade, and the empire survives, as it always has, through noise and negotiation. You pause to watch a street performer juggling knives, the blades flashing dangerously close to his fingers. A small crowd claps and tosses coins, children shrieking with delight. You feel a smile tug at your lips. For a moment, you are simply another spectator, not an anonymous artisan bound to crimson cloth. Then, from the corner of your eye, you catch sight of a familiar figure. A guild inspector, his dark robe marked with the subtle sign of authority. He is not here for you, perhaps not even for your workshop, but the sight tightens your chest. You turn quickly, blending back into the throng, heart racing. Even here, in the market's chaos, the guild looms. You finish your bread quickly, brushing crumbs from your lap. The pigeons squabble over the remains at your feet. You glance once more at the noisy stalls, the vendors still shouting, the gulls still circling, and you know you cannot linger. The banner waits, the eagle unfinished. The empire does not pause for bread or rumor, and so you turn back toward the workshop, ducking into its narrow doorway, leaving the market's chaos behind. The smell of fish and figs clings faintly to your cloak as you step once more into the dim, steady silence of thread and needle. The hum of the market fades, replaced by the softer hum of labor. And though your heart longs to stay outside, your hands know they must return to work. For the eagle's wings demand completion. The air inside is different after your brief escape to the market. The hum of voices and clatter of carts still echoes faintly in your ears. But here the silence reclaims you. The banner lies waiting, its eagle frozen mid-spread, golden thread glinting like captured light. You settle once more onto the wooden stool, adjust the cloth frame, and dip your head toward the next pattern. This part of the commission is not merely decoration. These are holy images, crosses, saints, angels that must be sewn with care, bordering on reverence. The empire does not separate faith from craft. To embroider an icon is to enter into prayer, whether you wish it or not. Your fingers feel clumsy at first, heavy from bread and market dust. But soon they fall back into rhythm. Needle pierces silk, thread glides through, stitch by stitch, halo by halo. Historians still argue whether artisans like you believed these stitches carried real sanctity, or whether it was simply the language of the court and church. Were you truly participating in the holy, or merely paid laborers dressing faith in finery? As your needle outlines a saint's robe, you wonder yourself. Perhaps the truth shifts with the person. Some of your fellow embroiderers murmur prayers as they work. Others mutter curses when thread snarls. You remain somewhere between, half reverence, half sarcasm. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. One priest once told you that every cross embroidered crooked invited demons to dance upon the fabric. You smile faintly at the thought. Imagine a little devil waltzing across the emperor's banner simply because your stitch wavered after a long night. Joke number 1 tonight. If demons truly danced on crooked stitches, this workshop would be hosting a festival every morning. The saint's halo is always stitched in gold, circles of light pinned down with the thinnest of silk. You couch the thread carefully, spacing each tack so it gleams evenly. The face is left blank for a painter later to finish in tempera, a collaboration of crafts across mediums. You think of Hagia Sophia, its walls shimmering with mosaics, tiny tesserae pressed into holy patterns. Your stitches mimic that work, a textile mosaic glimmering not in glass, but in thread. The room is dim, though, and your eyes strain. You pause, rubbing them, and glance toward the flickering lamps. Shadows climb high up the stone walls, where soot gathers in black streaks. The scent of smoke and old wax fills your lungs. You close your eyes for a breath, whispering, not to saints, not to guildmasters, but to your own body, that it will endure until this halo is finished. Around you, the other embroiderers mutter softly. One hums a hymn under his breath. Another recites prayers with lips barely moving. Their voices mix with the steady rasp of thread through silk, forming an odd choir. Faith is stitched here as surely as silk, woven into banners that will hang above altars, parade before processions, and drape across relics. You remember once standing in Hagia Sophia, craning your neck to see the golden dome. Light poured through windows, bathing everything in a glow that seemed not earthly. For a moment, you felt weightless, as though the stitches of the world itself had loosened. To work on church banners now feels like continuing that dome in miniature, a fragment of heaven pinned to cloth. Historians still argue whether Byzantine saw such splendor as divine proof or imperial propaganda. For you, the line is blurred. Propaganda that feels holy can still move a heart. Your needle slips once, pricking your fingertip again. You wince, watching another bead of blood rise. Carefully, you wipe it away, whispering apologies, half to the saint, half to the overseer, who would scold you for staining silk. You imagine, with wry humor, that saints must be used to such things by now. Joke number 2 tonight. Between crusaders, priests, and artisans, the saints probably spend eternity rolling their eyes. You continue, slower now, each stitch deliberate. The saint's robe fills with deep blue, the fold suggested by lighter threads. You think of indigo dye, of vats bubbling in distant workshops, of hands stained forever dark. You picture the dyers laughing at your pale fingers. Embroiderers keep soft hands, they'd say, though your cramped joints would disagree. The work drags on. Time stretches thin. The halo gleams brighter as it nears completion. The cross at the saint's side stands firm, symmetrical. You pause once to sip from a cup of water, the liquid warm, metallic from the jug. Your throat longs for wine, but that is for guild masters and feasts, not for bent-backed workers in smoke-filled rooms. You lean close again, counting stitches. Each one holds meaning, or so the priests say. Each loop an offering, each knot. To prayer, you do not feel holy, only tired, but you keep going. Perhaps holiness is simply repetition. Faith stitched into the body until the body itself becomes devotion. The workshop door creaks, and a priest steps inside, robes brushing the floor. He murmurs blessings over the cloth, sprinkles a few drops of water, and leaves as quickly as he came. The workers bow their heads briefly, then return to their labor. You smirk inwardly. Joke number 3 tonight. You wonder if he blesses the saints or the stitches, or simply checks to see if you're still awake. You resume. The threads slip through your fingers, steady now, forming patterns you could stitch even in your sleep. The eagle looms above, wings nearly finished, while saints and crosses blossom beneath. You are sewing empire and faith into one, as Byzantium demands. The saints shine brighter, the eagle stronger, the empire safer, or so the illusion tells itself. Your back aches, your eyes blur, but the cloth grows beautiful. You know that when it unfurls in the cathedral, people will gasp. No one will see your cramped fingers, your blood wiped away, your hours lost. They will see only divine shimmer. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is what history requires. Invisible hands stitching visible glory. You knot the last thread of the halo, pressing it flat. The saint gazes outward, unfinished, yet already radiant. You sigh, roll your shoulders, and prepare the next section. Outside, the city murmurs with its own prayers, its own chaos. But here you stitch on, binding heaven and earth with thread. The golden halo glimmers where you left it, but now the overseer gestures toward a different task. The border must be stitched in imperial purple, the color that announces power to anyone who glimpses it. You sigh softly, because this dye is as stubborn as it is sacred. Threads of purple shimmer with a darker richness than blue, deeper than crimson, as though night itself has been caught and spun. You draw one length through your needle, hold it to the light, and let your mind wander while your fingers begin their steady work. Imperial purple, Tyrian purple, has always carried weight heavier than its shade. In Constantinople, only emperors and their closest kin may wear it fully. A single thread on a banner, however, passes inspection. Still, you feel the tremor of risk every time you couch it into the silk. Historians still argue whether the restrictions were enforced with severity or exaggerated by later chroniclers. But the fear remains. The law says no one outside the palace may flaunt purple, yet here you sit, pressing it between your fingers. The dye itself, you recall, comes from the murex snail, creatures dredged from Mediterranean coasts. It takes thousands of them crushed and boiled to yield just a handful of pigment. You imagine the smell, foul beyond description, reeking of rotting sea. Sailors claim you can scent a dye workshop long before you see its chimneys. Joke number 1 tonight. If holiness truly came from suffering, the poor workers boiling snails should be canonized as saints of stench. The thread slides neatly into place, outlining the edge of a vine motif. Your fellow embroiderers glance occasionally at your work. Arguments break out often when purple is involved. Some insist it is sacred, reserved for emperors by divine right. Others scoff, claiming it is simply expensive dye, no holier than crushed berries. You yourself have stitched with enough shades to know that divinity has less to do with color and more to do with who can afford it. You remember once hearing a rumor that an emperor's child was described not as born, but as born in the purple, meaning within the palace chamber lined with violet porphyry stone. Even infants were cloaked in shade and symbol before they opened their eyes. Historians still argue whether this phrase was literal or ceremonial, but you cannot help picturing a crying newborn wrapped in banners brighter than the sun. The arguments in the workshop grow louder. One man claims the purple is blessed, drawn from the very sea foam of creation. Another shakes his head, saying only coin blesses it, nothing more. You smirk quietly, adding your own silent opinion. If purple is holy, then your cramped fingers must be halfway divine. The thread kinks, resisting, and you flatten it with damp fingers. It stains faintly, leaving a smear on your skin that looks like a bruise. You rub it, but the mark clings. You recall an older artisan joking that true embroiderers carry purple scars long after the banners are finished. Joke number 2 tonight. If your hands end up permanently dyed, you'll charge people admission to look at them as relics. The border grows steadily. Vine after vine, leaf after leaf. The purple weaves around the eagle like twilight closing in around a bird of gold. Your eyes ache again, but you keep going. Every loop is precise, every line sharp. If inspectors find flaws here, the punishment will not be light. The overseer paces, his sandals scuffing, his gaze sharp enough to cut. You bow your head lower, hiding fatigue. The lamp sputters, casting uneven light across the cloth. You lean closer, thread trembling in your grip. You think of those who harvested the snails, hauling nets, breaking shells, boiling vats for days. The stench must cling to their hair, their clothes, their very skin. Yet their names are gone. No chronicler writes of snail gatherers. No priest blesses their hands. Only the emperors gleam in purple, untouched by the labor that created it. Historians still debate whether the monopoly on dye enriched the empire or merely drained its coasts. Some say fields of empty shells once piled high as hills. Others claim exaggeration. You picture heaps of shells rotting in the sun, gulls circling, while the city paraded in robes of glory. The contrast is sharp enough to make your needle falter for a moment. You exhale slowly, steadying your hands. The purple thread glides smoother now, catching fire in the lamplight. You begin to find rhythm again. Dip, pull, tighten, release. The vines unfurl like living things, winding around the eagle, binding it to the cloth. Your shoulders sag, but your mind drifts. Perhaps purple is sacred, perhaps not. What matters is that you, invisible as always, are the one who makes it shine. The overseer mutters something about speed, and you bite your tongue. Faster, always faster, though the thread tangles if rushed. You keep steady, ignoring his impatience. If the work fails, he will not be blamed. You will. That knowledge sits heavy in your chest, heavier than any dye. Your fellow workers resume their hushed debate. One claims emperors chose purple to mimic the robes of gods. Another insists the dye simply outlasted others, its color refusing to fade in sun or time. You listen without speaking, though in your heart you suspect both are true. Purple is rare, expensive, enduring, and therefore divine in the eyes of men who hunger for permanence. The room grows warm from the lamps. Sweat beads on your brow. slips down your temples. You wipe it with your sleeve, careful not to drip on the cloth. The stain of purple on your fingers seems to pulse, as though reminding you the dye marks not just the fabric, but you. You are part of the cost, part of the sacrifice, your body inked invisibly into the banner's story. Joke number 3 tonight comes to you as you glance at the nearly finished border. If emperors truly knew how much snail slime, sweat, and spit went into their purple, they might think twice before strutting about like gods. Or perhaps they would enjoy it more, knowing how much misery shone in their robes. At last, you knot the thread, flatten the vine, and lean back. The border gleams, deep and regal. The eagle, golden and proud, now floats within a sea of purple twilight. Your eyes blur, your back groans, but the sight almost steals your breath. It is beautiful, yes, but also heavy with meaning, heavy with cost. You rest your hands briefly, flexing cramped fingers. Outside, bells toll faintly, marking another hour lost to silk. You sigh, gather a new length of thread, and prepare to continue. Purple will not finish itself, and neither will the empire's sheet's endless hunger for symbols. Your stomach growls loud enough to startle the worker beside you. He smirks, but says nothing, only lifts his own bread to his mouth with a quick bite. You realize you have reached the hour when food becomes the empire's only mercy. The overseer waves his hand, dismissing you all for a brief pause. You set down your needle carefully, stretch your cramped fingers, and push yourself to your feet. The room tilts for a moment as blood rushes back into your legs, but you steady yourself and follow the others toward the courtyard. The courtyard is a cramped square open to the sky, its stones worn smooth by countless footsteps. A few benches line the walls, already occupied by men and women tearing into bread, olives, and dried figs. The air smells of sweat and oil, but at least it is fresher than the workshop. You sit on a low step, unwrap the cloth bundle you carried from home, and find what you expected. Coarse bread, a handful of olives, and a wedge of salty cheese. It is not much, but it is enough to quiet the gnawing in your belly. As you chew, you overhear voices around you. A priest in dark robes sits with his meal across from a sailor, whose hands are still calloused from ropes. The pairing seems odd, but in Constantinople, odd pairings are the norm. The priest speaks earnestly about relics, bones of saints, scraps of cloth, that he swears carry divine power. He insists that when displayed during processions, the relics protect the city itself, shielding it from siege and storm. The sailor, chewing noisily on bread, shakes his head. He claims no relic ever kept a ship from sinking. No saint's finger ever calmed a storm. The two men argue softly, neither willing to yield. Historians still argue whether relics were truly revered for spiritual faith or manipulated as political theater. Listening now, you suspect both. The priest clings to belief, the sailor clings to doubt, and between them, the empire profits by selling hope. You swallow another bite of cheese and wonder which of them is right, or if it matters at all. One of your fellow embroiderers leans close and mutters that she once saw a relic miracle, a lamp near a holy shroud, supposedly burned brighter without more oil. Others chuckle, unconvinced. Joke number 1 tonight. You whisper back that perhaps the relic simply learned to cheat the market prices of olive oil. The laughter that follows is soft, but welcome. A relief after hours of silence. You wash the bread down with water from a shared jug, the liquid lukewarm and metallic. The sailor gulps wine instead, his flask tilting high, his voice growing louder with each swallow. He insists the empire is rotting from within, too reliant on gilded cloth and relics, not enough on ships and soldiers. The priest frowns, clutching his cross, and warns that blasphemy carries punishments harsher than hunger. Their words clash like waves against stone, but you stay silent. You are only here to eat. The olives are bitter, the pits sharp between your teeth. You spit one into your palm, toss it aside, and watch it bounce across the stone. A dog darts forward to snatch it, then spits it out with disgust. You chuckle, thinking that even strays know better than to trust promises wrapped in bitterness. Joke number 2 tonight. You murmur that the dog has more wisdom than most nobles in the Senate, and a few heads nod in weary agreement. Your eyes wander upward as you chew. The slice of sky above the courtyard glows pale, clouds drifting lazily. For a moment, the light softens everything. The worn faces, the hunched shoulders, even the priest's furrowed brow. You think about how the city outside teems with life, even now. Markets, docks, palaces, all moving while you sit here with bread and olives. Constantinople never sleeps, never quiets. And yet, here in this brief pause, you feel suspended, as though the empire itself has taken a breath. Another embroiderer begins telling a story about a relic procession years ago. He claims the crowd was so dense that a man fainted and was trampled, but the priest declared it proof of divine power. The relic was too strong for mortal bodies. The sailor laughs bitterly, muttering that people die every day without relics, and at least without parades, they die quietly. Historians still argue whether relic processions were acts of devotion or strategies of control. But to you, the debate feels moot. You know only that people will cling to whatever eases their fear. You finish your last olive, suck the salt from your fingertips, and glance at the priest. His eyes shine with certainty as he praises the bones of saints. The sailor's eyes shine with certainty too, though his is the certainty of doubt. You envy them both, to believe without question or to reject without fear. Either would be easier than this endless half-belief you carry. The overseer calls out sharply, signaling the end of the meal. Groans rise from the benches, but no one protests. You brush crumbs from your lap, stretch stiffly, and return to the workshop with the others. The cloth bundle feels lighter now, your stomach heavier, though not quite full. Back inside, the lamps sputter back to life, shadows crawling up the walls once more. You take your seat, pick up your needle, and face the eagle again. The purple vines gleam where you left them, the golden halo still radiant. You exhale slowly, preparing your body for more hours of strain. The market hum has faded. The priest's words have faded. Even the sailor's laughter has faded. What remains is only this: silk, thread, and silence. Joke number 3. Tonight arrives unbidden as you thread the needle again. If relics truly held power, perhaps one day they'll find a saint's bone that keeps artisans awake at their benches without complaint. Until then, you remain your own miracle, dragging tired hands back to work. You press the thread into place, stitch by stitch, as the empire resumes its endless appetite. Your stomach may be quiet now, but the banner still hungers for more of your time, more of your life, more of your invisible devotion. You oblige, because that is what you do. That is what you are. The purple vines hold steady now, enclosing the eagle in twilight richness. But the overseer gestures again, and you know what comes next. It is the task that gives you both dread and secret joy. Stitching creatures into the cloth. Not mere feathers or halos, but griffins, eagles, lions, half-mythic beasts that straddle the line between faith and fantasy. The patterns are already drawn faintly in chalk, wings arched, tails curling, claws outstretched. All that remains is to breathe them into life with thread. You thread your needle with crimson silk, then gold, then green, alternating as the chalk demands. The first shape you tackle is a griffin, eagle above, lion below, its wings sweeping into the border. You guide the needle carefully, imagining each stitch as a feather, each feather as a breath. Slowly, the creature takes form. Historians still argue whether Byzantines believed griffins to be real or symbolic. But here, on the banner, belief hardly matters. The image itself carries power. You pause to admire the shimmer of gold on the griffin's wing. A quirky tidbit drifts back to you. Sailors once swore griffins guarded mountains of gold in distant lands, tearing apart anyone foolish enough to steal. You smile faintly at the irony. Here you are, stitching gold into a griffin's body, hoping no sailor barges in demanding treasure. Joke number 1 tonight. If griffins truly guarded gold, your workshop would need more claws and fewer needles. The thread pulls taut. The griffin's eye glints black, tiny but piercing. You step back slightly, imagining how it will look when the banner unfurls in the sun. The creature will seem alive, mid-leap, a beast frozen in cloth, yet ready to pounce. You sigh softly, knowing no one will ever credit you for the illusion. People will marvel at the griffin, not at the hands that conjured it from silk. The eagle symbol in the center grows ever more commanding, but these smaller beasts lend it a strange harmony. You stitch a lion next, its mane flowing in threads of fiery orange. The chalk lines guide you, though the thread sometimes rebels, curling where it shouldn't. You flatten it, coax it into place. The lion's face emerges slowly, first abstract, then suddenly recognizable, as if it had always been waiting under the cloth. Historians still debate whether Byzantine artisans saw themselves as mere craftsmen or as co-creators of holy and imperial imagery. Were you worshippers with needles or laborers at benches? As the lion's paw stretches outward in golden claw, you wonder which you are. Some days you feel like both. Other days, like neither. The room grows hushed again, each worker lost in their own beasts. You glance sideways at your neighbor's work, a serpent coiling around a vine, its scales flashing silver. The detail is astounding. You nod in silent respect, though you feel the sting of competition. The guild thrives on rivalry, even here in silence. The candle nearest you burns low, wax pooling dangerously near the edge of the table. You move it slightly, unwilling to risk months of work to a careless drip. The shadows leap across the griffin's wings, making them seem to stir. Joke number 2 tonight. You murmur to yourself that if the griffins really do leap off the cloth, you'll happily send them to finish the rest of the border for you. The saints you stitched earlier gleam solemnly above these creatures, and the contrast amuses you. Faith above, beasts below, heaven and earth, prayer and myth, all bound together in silk. The Byzantines never drew sharp lines between sacred and strange. Everything could be folded into the empire's vision. Your stitches carry that paradox forward. Griffins beside saints, lions beside crosses, all shimmering in unison. Your fingers ache again, cramped from gripping needle and thread. You pause, flexing them, then run a hand across the cloth surface. The silk is smooth, but the raised stitches give it texture, almost like scales. You close your eyes for a moment, imagining the banner alive, its beasts prowling, its saints watching, its eagle forever glaring east and west. A memory surfaces of a festival you once attended as a child. Banners unfurled above the crowd, embroidered beasts snarling at the sky. You had gasped then, certain they were alive, certain they might leap down and carry you away. Now you know the truth. They were the work of invisible hands like yours. Yet even with that knowledge, some part of you still believes in their power. Historians still argue whether the awe of Byzantine imagery came from divine inspiration or clever artisanship. For you, it no longer matters. Awe is awe, no matter the source. The griffin's wing nears completion. You knot the thread carefully, smoothing it with damp fingers. It shines as though lit from within. You turn to the next creature, a stag leaping in silver thread. Its antlers curl delicately, a nightmare to stitch, each curve demanding patience. The thread twists often, forcing you to pick it out again and again. Yet slowly, surely, the antlers emerge, curling like branches of frost. Joke number 3 tonight escapes your lips before you can stop it. You mutter that if the stag keeps tangling your thread, you'll cook it for supper. The worker beside you stifles a laugh, shoulders shaking silently. Even here, in the solemn task of imperial embroidery, a little humor survives. The workshop's water clock drips steadily, marking time in silence. You no longer think in hours. You think in beasts. A griffin, a lion, a stag. Each finished shape is another weight lifted, another step toward completion. You imagine the banner at last hanging high, the beasts gleaming, the eagle soaring, the saint's blessing. The crowd will gasp. The emperor will nod. The priests will chant. And you? You will be back here, bent again over another cloth, another task, another endless rhythm. Your shoulders sag, but your hands keep moving. Thread slips through needle. Needle slips through silk. Silk becomes image. You are tired, yes, but the banner grows magnificent, and you know it will outlast you. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is all you can ask. You lean closer, finish the stag's final antler, and tie the knot. The beasts gleam together now. Griffin, lion, stag, woven companions for the imperial eagle. Their eyes seem to meet yours, unblinking, half-living. You sit back, sigh, and let your hands rest on your lap for a moment. Outside, faint bells toll, carrying across the city. You glance at the nearly finished section, nod once to yourself, and lift your needle again. The beasts may rest, but you cannot. The empire is never full, never satisfied, never finished. The beasts gleam, their eyes sharp and their wings poised, but you hardly have time to admire them before the workshop stills. The sound of sandals on stone echoes down the corridor. Measured, deliberate, too heavy for ordinary feet. A murmur spreads, chairs scrape, and the overseer straightens sharply. You know before you see them. The imperial inspectors have arrived. 2 men step through the door, robes dark and eyes darker. Their hands are clasped behind their backs, their posture as rigid as the empire's laws. They do not smile. They do not nod. They look only at the banners, moving from bench to bench, gazes flicking like blades across every stitch. The silence is suffocating. Even the candles seem to shrink. Historians still argue whether inspectors were feared more than guildmasters, or whether their authority overlapped. In this moment, you know the answer does not matter. Their presence is enough to freeze your breath. You keep your eyes down, your needle poised, pretending to work through your fingers tremble. The first inspector pauses at a banner embroidered with saints. He leans close, eyes narrowing. The worker beside you stiffens, sweat beating at his temple. After a long, unbearable silence, the inspector straightens, says nothing, and moves on. Relief floods the room, but it is thin, temporary. They come to your bench next. The golden eagle sprawls across crimson silk, its wings nearly complete, surrounded by griffins and lions. You bow your head lower, as though humility might disguise any flaws. One inspector bends, so close you can smell the faint tang of incense on his robe. His eyes trace the eagle's wing, the vines, the saints. His fingers hover above the fabric, never touching, as though even he fears to mar imperial property. You remember suddenly a quirky tidbit told by an older worker. One inspector supposedly had such sharp vision he could spot a crooked stitch from across the room. Another claimed it was myth, a story spread to frighten apprentices. You cannot tell if this man before you is that myth come alive, but his stare pierces deeper than any needle. Joke number 1 tonight. If he truly sees that well, you wonder why he bothers with banners instead of joining the falconers. The inspector straightens. His lips press into a line, unreadable. He whispers something to his companion, too low for you to catch. They move on without a word. Your breath rushes out, your chest sagging in relief. The overseer nods curtly, as though to say, "You survived. For now." The inspectors continue their circuit, stopping here, pausing there. Sometimes they mutter, sometimes they remain silent. No one dares speak. The workshop feels less like a place of labor and more like a court of judgment, each stitch a testimony. Each banner a plea for mercy. Historians still debate whether inspectors punished errors harshly or merely recorded them for guild fines. You know that sometimes workshops whispered of ruined reputations, confiscated wages, even imprisonment for suspected sabotage. Whether true or not, the fear is real. Fear is enough. When the men finally reach the door, they pause. One glances back, his eyes sweeping across the room like a shadow. Then they are gone, their sandals fading down the hall. For a moment, no one moves. Then, slowly, breath returns. Shoulders drop. Someone coughs. The overseer exhales loudly, wiping his brow. You flex your fingers, still trembling slightly. Your heart pounds against your ribs, as though it too had been inspected. The griffins and lions stare up at you, unbothered, their stitched eyes eternal. You whisper a small thanks, to thread, to luck, to whatever shielded you from flaw. One worker mutters bitterly that inspectors never stitch a single loop themselves, yet act as though they own every banner. Another shushes him quickly, reminding him that walls carry words farther than mouths intend. You nod silently. Joke number 2 tonight. You imagine inspectors carrying their own embroidery kits, pricking their fingers within minutes, then fining themselves for bloodstains. The overseer claps his hands sharply, breaking the moment. "Back to work," he snaps, though his voice wavers with leftover nerves. You bend again over the cloth, needle poised, though the rhythm feels fractured now. The silence is heavier, the air tighter. Each stitch seems louder than before, each knot a potential crime. You think of the Empire's endless appetite for perfection. Inspectors enforce it. Guilds regulate it. Emperors demand it. Yet perfection is not human. You know that. Everyone here knows that. And still you bend. Still you stitch, trying to hide the flaw in your hand, in your eye, in your weary body. Historians still argue whether Byzantine artisans achieved greatness by skill alone or by fear drilled into their bones. You suspect it was both. The candle burns low beside you. Its flame trembles, smoke curling upward. You stitch the eagle's talon now, sharp and curling, clutching nothing but looking ready to seize. You think of the inspector's eyes, their talons hidden, but just as sharp. Joke number 3 tonight. You mutter under your breath that the eagle and the inspectors must be cousins, both bred to glare east and west without rest. Your hands steady slowly, returning to rhythm. Thread through silk, silk through thread, stitch by stitch. The inspectors may come again tomorrow, or next week, or never. Their absence is no guarantee of peace. You sigh softly, shoulders slumping, but you keep working. There is no choice. The griffin gleams, the lion prowls, the eagle looms, the saints shimmer above. Your stitches hold, at least for now, under judgment's gaze. The inspectors may vanish into corridors, but their shadow lingers in every loop of silk, every knot of thread. You bow your head lower, needle poised, and continue. The Empire watches always, even when no eyes are in the room. The air feels lighter once the inspectors have gone, but it is not freedom. It is only the space left behind by tension, like the silence after thunder, when you are not sure if the storm has truly passed. Your needle dips again, the thread gliding smooth, and slowly the rhythm returns. In the corner of the room, someone begins to hum, a low, tuneless sound that seeps into the air like smoke. Another voice joins in, tentative at first, then firmer. Before long, the workshop hums with a strange music, a patchwork of voices rising and falling with the scrape of chairs and the hiss of thread through silk. This is how you survive the hours. Songs and muttered verses, jokes half-whispered, mistakes turned into rhythm. It is not rebellion, not exactly, but it is defiance in its own quiet way. If the guild masters and inspectors want perfection, they will still have to accept that artisans are human, and humans make noise. You find your lips moving before you realize it, humming a melody that slips out of memory. It may have been a hymn once, or maybe a street song. You do not care. It keeps your fingers steady, and that is enough. Historians still argue whether Byzantine workshops were solemn places of discipline or noisy dens of chatter and laughter. You know the truth bends depending on the hour, the commission, the overseer's mood. Tonight, at least, the overseer does not silence the voices. Perhaps he knows songs keep the work alive. A man across from you begins to recite lines of verse, stumbling on the words. Others laugh softly and correct him, their voices overlapping. The poem twists into a parody, saints and emperors replaced with silly rhymes about snails and needles. Joke number 1 tonight. You add a line about a griffin refusing to guard gold unless it's paid overtime, and the laughter shakes the silence like loose tiles on a roof. The overseer frowns, but does not scold. He knows that silence without relief breaks faster than stitches under strain. The humming resumes, softer this time, weaving under the scrape of shears and the sighs of weary lungs. You stitch the eagle's breastplate now, threads of silver shining, each one couched neatly into place. The music steadies your hand, guiding you as surely as any chalk line. You remember, faintly, your mother's voice singing while spinning wool. The rhythm of her spindle matched her song, and her hands never faltered. Perhaps songs were always meant to be paired with craft. You wonder how many generations hummed into cloth, their voices swallowed by time, leaving only silent stitches behind. Historians still debate whether artisans considered their work prayer or performance. You suspect, sometimes, it was both. A young apprentice mispronounces a line of the hymn, swapping words so badly that the meaning flips. The room erupts into muffled laughter, shoulders shaking, threads tangling. You grin, shaking your head, and joke number 2 tonight slips out. You whisper that the saints will forgive bad stitching, but never bad singing. Even the overseer snorts once, though he hides it behind a cough. The rhythm grows stronger now, a steady undercurrent to the needle's dance. Someone taps their shears against the table in time, turning the hum into percussion. Another claps softly. For a moment, the workshop feels less like a prison and more like a tavern chorus, though without wine. The weight on your back eases slightly, and your eyes blur less. You lean close, finishing the eagle's breast, each silver thread laid carefully, glinting like armor. You imagine the bird armored for war, soaring above armies, though in truth it soars only above parades. Still, the image stirs you. Historians still argue whether such banners were seen as divine shields or merely as dazzling cloth. When the sun strikes them, the effect is almost supernatural, light flashing off gold and silver until it blinds. Perhaps that is holiness enough. Perhaps the divine lives in dazzled eyes as much as in relics. The humming quiets for a while, replaced by the scratch of thread and the occasional sigh. You hear a worker mutter a curse when his thread knots, then quickly replace it with a muttered prayer, hedging his bets. You smile faintly, knowing both words probably travel to the same ears anyway. The water clock drips, steady as ever. You hum again, this time softer, almost like a lullaby. Your neighbor joins you, then another. Soon the air vibrates with sound once more, layered and imperfect, but comforting. It is not music anyone would pay to hear. It is not music to move an emperor, but it is music enough to carry you through another hour. Joke number 3 tonight arrives as you tie off another knot. You whisper that if the inspectors ever returned in the middle of your humming, they would fine you for unlicensed choir practices. The chuckles that ripple through the benches are small, but warm. Your eyes grow heavy, but the rhythm keeps you steady. Stitch by stitch, song by song, the eagle gleams brighter, the saints shine firmer, the beasts prowl sharper. The banner grows alive beneath your hands, though you know it is only thread. Still, you wonder, centuries from now, will anyone imagine the song sung into these stitches? Or will they see only the gleam, never the voices that carried it? Historians still argue whether artisans left any trace of themselves in their work, or whether the empire swallowed them whole. You hope, secretly, that some of your humming remains, woven into the cloth like invisible thread. The candle sputters, casting shadows across your bench. The griffin's stitched eye glints again, and for a moment you think it winks at you, amused by your song. You shake your head, smiling faintly, and return to the needle. The work continues, but at least now it hums. And so the night deepens. The workshop is alive with sound, low voices, half-remembered verses, the soft hiss of silk sliding through silk. It is not rebellion, not freedom, but it is survival. The songs will not be remembered. The stitches will. But for now, both carry you forward, steady as the dripping of the water clock, eternal as the empire's hunger for banners. The humming fades as the hours stretch long, and silence falls again, though it is a different silence than before. This one is weighted not only with fatigue, but with whispers carried from the streets beyond the workshop walls. You lean forward, threading your needle again, but your ears are restless. Someone mutters that the Venetians have grown bold, demanding more privileges at the docks. Another voice whispers that taxes will climb once more, squeezing peasants dry. The overseer pretends not to hear, though his frown deepens with each rumor. You keep stitching, but your thoughts drift. The city outside is never still. Soldiers march the walls, priests chant in churches, merchants haggle in markets. And always there are rumors of crusaders in the west, of enemies across the sea, of fortresses crumbling. Historians still argue whether Constantinople's strength in this era was security or illusion. But in the workshop, the sense of fragility presses as tightly as the cloth on your frame. You couch a thread of gold into place, outlining another curl of the eagle's feathers. Your eyes sting, and you pause to rub them, listening more than watching. A younger apprentice leans close to his neighbor, whispering about the city's defenses. He claims his cousin saw cracks in the Theodosian walls, stones slipping from age. Another insists that Greek fire will protect the city forever, as it has before. The voices rise, uncertain, tugging at faith like loose stitches. A quirky tidbit drifts from one worker's lips. He says that in times past, the emperors kept crocodiles in hidden pits to frighten prisoners, feeding them on scraps from the palace kitchens. You doubt the truth of it, but the idea clings. Joke number 1 tonight. You whisper that perhaps they should unleash the crocodiles on the inspectors, and the smothered laughter that follows feels almost treasonous. The overseer clears his throat sharply, reminding everyone to keep their eyes on the cloth. Yet the murmurs continue, low and steady, like the water clocks dripping. Rumors are harder to silence than voices. Your own mind wanders to the docks, to the ships rocking on the Bosporus. You picture Latin sails rising beyond the horizon, their crusaders claiming to come as allies, but hungering for spoils. You imagine tax collectors with ledgers thick as banners, marching through alleys with guards at their sides. The empire always seems to need more coin, more ships, more banners like the one you stitch now. Historians still argue whether Byzantium collapsed from outside invasion or inside hunger. As your needle dips again, you suspect both, stitched together like threads in the same cloth. The griffin you finished earlier gleams back at you, its stitched eye fierce. It seems to ask whether the empire's beasts can keep enemies at bay, or whether they only frighten children at parades. You shake your head softly, almost answering aloud. Another rumor spreads, that the emperor plans to raise levies, pulling farmers from their fields to man the walls. Someone groans, saying his brother already labors under the weight of debt, and conscription would break him. The overseer scowls, but says nothing. He knows as well as you that these whispers are not baseless. Joke number 2 tonight slips out as you guide another golden thread. You mutter that if farmers abandon the fields, the empire will have plenty of banners and no bread. The laughter is short, bitter, but laughter nonetheless. The candle beside you flickers as a draft slips under the door. You glance up, imagining the streets beyond. Perhaps outside, a herald is proclaiming victories that never happened, or announcing taxes disguised as blessings. You sigh. Return to your work. The empire's troubles always find their way into the workshop, stitched invisibly into the cloth. The water clock drips again. Each drop feels heavier, like time itself is sinking. You press your needle through, pulling the thread tight, and think of the walls again, the massive stones, the iron gates, the towers looming above the sea. You want to believe they are eternal. Everyone wants to believe. Yet cracks form in all things, stone as well as silk. Historians still argue whether the city's walls were maintained faithfully or left to decay in complacency. For you, it is only another rumor, yet one that gnaws at the edges of faith. Your hands ache. You pause to flex them, then lean back, rolling your shoulders. Across the room, another worker hums again, soft and uneasy, as though trying to drown out the rumors. The song falters, replaced by silence. You sigh. You knot another thread, glance at the beasts arrayed across the cloth, then back at the eagle. Its wings are nearly done, but its eyes remain hollow chalk outlines. You wonder whether filling them with black silk will make them fiercer or only emptier. You think of inspector's eyes, of tax collector's eyes, of crusader's eyes, all unblinking, all hungry. Joke number 3 tonight comes bitterly. You whisper that if rumors were thread, the empire would never lack banners. A few shoulders shake in silent laughter, but the overseer glares, and the sound dies quickly. You bow lower, focusing again. Stitch by stitch, the eagle grows more complete, more dazzling. Outside, the city may fret over crusaders and taxes, but inside, the banner gleams. Perhaps that is the empire's greatest trick, to shine enough that people forget the cracks beneath. The candle burns lower, shadows climbing the walls. The workshop hums with weariness now, less gossip, more silence. Your body bends, your eyes blur, but the thread keeps moving. Whatever storms rise beyond these walls, you are bound to this cloth. The empire may falter or flourish, but you will still be here, stitching its image into permanence. The overseer lights new lamps as dusk deepens, their flames wavering in the workshop's stale air. You blink against the glow, your eyes protesting after so many hours of strain. The day outside is fading into evening, though here it is marked only by the change of light and the growing weariness in your body. You thread your needle again, lifting a length of gold, and lean closer to the cloth. The eagle's form demands more of you yet, its wings wide but still incomplete. The oil lamps cast their own kind of beauty. Each one flickers uncertainly, shadows rippling across the walls and across your work. The golden threads catch the light, gleaming like rivers under moonlight. You pause for a breath, letting yourself admire the effect. In a parade, under sun, this banner will blind with brilliance. But here, under tired lamps, it feels quieter, softer, like a private secret between artisan and cloth. Historians still argue whether Byzantine artisans cared about the finished effect or only about surviving their shifts. You suspect the truth is mixed. Pride keeps you steady, but so does fear. One misplaced stitch can mean fines, shame, or worse. Yet you cannot help feeling satisfaction when the light reveals perfection, however brief. Your neighbor coughs, shaking his head, muttering about smoke. The lamps leave soot streaks above, blackening the ceiling. You know this well. Many artisans cough through winters, their lungs painted darker than the walls. You clear your throat, return to work, and think again of the thread sliding through silk. The griffin you stitched earlier seems alive now, its golden feathers glowing under the lamps. You smirk faintly. Joke number 1 tonight. You whisper that if the griffins could flap their wings, they'd clear the smoke better than these lamps ever could. A stifled chuckle drifts back, quickly swallowed, but enough to ease the tension. Your fingers tremble slightly, and you flex them, rubbing stiff joints. The day has bent you like iron softened by too much fire. Yet you stitch onward. The eagle's breast grows stronger under silver thread, glinting like armor. The purple vines curl tighter around its frame, their dye dark as midnight. You lose yourself in the rhythm. Dip, pull, knot, repeat. Beyond the window slit, you hear faint sounds of the city. Church bells toll, echoing across Constantinople, carried by the sea air. Somewhere, voices rise in evening prayer. Somewhere else, tavern songs swell. But here, only the lamps burn, only the needle dips. The world outside may feast, pray, or fight. You remain bound to cloth. A quirky tidbit floats back to you. One artisan once swore that oil lamps whispered when left burning long enough, voices hidden in their hiss. You glance at yours, half amused, half wary, as the flame trembles. Joke number 2 tonight. You murmur that if the lamp truly whispers, you hope it tells you which stitch comes next. The overseer paces, sandals scuffing stone. His shadow looms across the cloth, briefly blotting the eagle. You wait for him to pass before continuing. He mutters about speed again, though everyone ignores it. Speed and perfection cannot live together, but overseers never accept that truth. You stitch slower now, careful. The black silk thread is ready for the eagle's eyes. You hesitate, holding the needle above the chalk outline. These eyes matter more than wings, more than talons. They are what soldiers will see first when the banner flies. They are judgment, warning, glory. You exhale, then pierce the silk. Historians still argue whether symbols gained power from the artisans who shaped them or from the emperors who commanded them. As the eagle's eyes darken under your needle, you wonder yourself, does the banner command awe because you stitched it, or because an emperor will march beneath it? Perhaps both. Perhaps neither. Perhaps the true power lies in the spectators who choose to believe. The black silk forms a circle, then another. Slowly, the eagle's gaze sharpens. You feel it watching you, unblinking, unmerciful. A chill creeps into your spine, though the lamps burn hot. You knot the thread firmly, as though binding its stare to the cloth. Joke number 3 tonight. You whisper that if the eagle truly watches, it ought to help pay your guild fees. The overseer calls for silence, though no one was speaking. He seems unsettled too, pacing faster. Perhaps the eagle's gaze unnerves him as well. You bow your head lower, pretending you don't notice. The lamps burn lower, oil nearly gone. Shadows lengthen. The griffin glows faintly. The saints shimmer dimly. The eagle looms darker than before. You stitch through the gloom, guided by memory more than sight. Your eyes water, but your hands continue. Someone yawns loudly. Another mutters a curse at tangled thread. The room feels slower now, heavier. Time stretches like wax dripping from the lamps. Each stitch feels longer than the last, as though the needle resists moving forward. Yet you push. You must. The banner demands it. The empire demands it. Your overseer demands it. Historians still debate whether Byzantine artisans were driven more by devotion or coercion. You know the answer. By both, stitched tightly together, impossible to untangle. Without devotion, your hand would falter. Without coercion, your hand would stop entirely. The eagle's eyes gleam black now, fixed and eternal. Its wings shimmer gold and silver, its frame bound by purple vines. You sit back briefly, exhaling, and feel a flicker of pride. It is nearly complete, this symbol of empire, this fabric of glory. You know it will leave this room and dazzle crowds, and no one will know your name. You rub your aching eyes, glance once at the lamp, and prepare a new length of thread. The evening deepens into night. The city murmurs faintly beyond stone walls. But here, only the lamps glow. Only the eagle watches. Only the thread moves. You bow your head lower, steadying your hands, and return once more to the endless rhythm. Needle, silk, stitch, knot. The night stretches on. The lamps sputter as the night lengthens, their flames growing tired like the people bent beneath them. You sit hunched, the cloth frame heavy on your lap, the eagle looming finished, yet still demanding more. Your shoulders ache, as though weighted with stones. Your hands tremble when you grip the needle too long, and your eyes blur until the stitches blur with them. But you cannot stop. Not yet. The day's final work awaits. The last edges, the borders that tie all into unity, the knots that anchor labor into permanence. You thread the needle again, the black silk slick between your fingers. The overseer mutters that this section must be flawless. His voice grates like a whetstone against your nerves. He paces, sandals scraping, and you resist the urge to stitch his shadow into the cloth as punishment. Joke number 1 tonight. You whisper inwardly that if overseers were stitched into every banner, no enemy would dare attack. Too busy laughing at the Empire's grumpy guardians. The workshop is hushed now, quieter even than before. Most chatter has drained away, leaving only the scrape of stools and the faint hiss of silk. Each artisan bends like you, faces half hidden in lamplight, all caught in the same rhythm. You wonder whether your neighbors feel the same mix of pride and exhaustion. Their eyes seem hollow, but their hands move steady, never faltering. You envy their steadiness. Your own stitches wobble when your fingers cramp, and you pause often to flex them. Historians still argue whether the late hours of workshops produced the best work or the most mistakes. Some claim that repetition under lamplight sharpened skill, while others insist fatigue invited error. As you stab the needle through again, you know which side you stand on. Fatigue gnaws your concentration like moths eating wool. Yet the banner still grows, still gleams. You tie a knot, smooth it flat, and lean closer. The purple vines along the border stretch nearly complete, curling in spirals that meet at corners. The griffins prowl, the lions gleam, the saints glow faintly. The eagle watches all, eyes dark and fixed. It is a tapestry of empire, a world condensed into silk. And you, nameless, bend to finish it. The candle wax pools, spilling across the table in sluggish rivers. You press your palm into the grooves of the bench, grounding yourself. A quirky tidbit rises from memory. Some said beeswax candles carried prayers heavenward faster than words. The thicker the wax, the more likely the prayer was heard. You stare at the dripping wax and wonder if prayers escape faster when the candle runs low. Joke number 2 tonight. You murmur that if heaven listens by weight of wax, this workshop could finance the prayers of half the city. You press on. The final stitches demand precision. You guide the thread through slowly, tugging gently, flattening carefully. Your breath slows, your eyes narrow. Your whole being reduces to needle and silk. Around you, the others blur into shadows, into shapes bent like statues. You wonder, briefly, if from above the workshop looks like an icon itself. Rows of bowed heads, halos of lamplight circling each weary skull. The overseer inspects once more, muttering, but saying little. Perhaps even he is too tired to scold. You hear his sandals pause behind one worker, then shuffle away again. The tension loosens, just slightly, but enough for a sigh to escape your lips. The eagle's talons take form beneath your needle. You stitch them sharp, curling, dangerous. You almost flinch when the black thread curves into claws. They seem to clutch nothing, and yet they clutch everything. The weight of empire, the illusion of strength, the hope of people who will never see your face. Historians still debate whether such images inspired loyalty or fear. Soldiers may have marched taller beneath them, or they may have cursed their weight. Priests may have declared them holy, or they may have muttered privately about wasted coin. You wonder which truth will survive. Perhaps both. Perhaps neither. Perhaps only the eagle's image, detached from meaning, will flutter centuries beyond you. The night grows colder, the air seeping damp through cracks in the wall. You shiver, pulling your cloak tighter, but your hands remain bare. You cannot risk cloth snagging silk. Your fingers numb, but still you move. Thread, knot, pull, flatten. The rhythm carries you. Another worker hums faintly again, a lullaby this time. Words lost, but tune clear. It comforts you more than prayer. You stitch in time with the melody, letting the sound lift your fatigue. Your eyes blur less, your fingers steady, slightly. Music and thread. Perhaps the empire is held together by both, though neither appears in chronicles. Joke number 3 tonight slips out quietly. You murmur that if songs stitched into banners stayed within them, this eagle would sing louder than the choir at Hagia Sophia. A few chuckles answer, soft as moth wings. You lean back briefly, stretching. The banner sprawls before you now, nearly whole. The eagle's wings stretch proud. The saints glow. The beasts prowl. The vines curl and knot, enclosing all. Only a few final lines remain. You thread again, your eyes stinging, your back rigid. Your body begs for rest, but your hands obey the cloth. The water clock drips, steady and merciless. You measure its rhythm with your own. Drip, stitch, drip, stitch. Time and thread entwine. Both endless, both fleeting. You picture the banner's future. It will hang above parades, flutter above armies, sway before priests. Crowds will gape, soldiers will chant, priests will bless. No one will think of you, hunched in lamplight, coughing in smoke. The eagle will outlast you. The griffins will prowl centuries after your bones are dust. Historians still argue whether artisans cared about legacy or only survival. You know the truth. You care about both, though neither will remember you. Your hand cramps sharply, pain flaring. You drop the needle, flex your fingers, press your palm against your thigh. You close your eyes briefly, forcing the ache away, then pick up the needle once more. The thread tangles, snarls, refuses to pass. You curse softly, untangling, smoothing, forcing it back into obedience. The last vine curls under your hand, looping neatly into the border. You tie the knot firmly, press it flat, and exhale. The banner is nearly finished now. Only minor touches left. You stare at it, vision hazy, but pride stirs faintly. You have given it hours, days, blood, spit, and humor. It shines regardless. The overseer glances once, nods curtly, and mutters that tomorrow it will be reviewed. Tomorrow, perhaps, It leaves the workshop forever. You feel relief, but also emptiness. The banner will go. You will stay. Another cloth will take its place. Another eagle, another saint, another beast. Always another. You lean back, closing your eyes briefly, listening to the hum of weary bodies. The lamps flicker, smoke curling upward. The griffin gleams faintly. The eagle stares. The saints glow. And you? One more stitch in the empire's fabric. Wait for dawn. The banner lies stretched before you, nearly whole. The eagle proud and dark-eyed. The saints gleaming faintly in halos of gold. The beasts prowling at the edges. The vines curling around, all like the borders of a garden. Yet the day is not done. Not until the last knots are tied and the final edges secured. You take a steadying breath, thread your needle once more, and bow your head over the cloth. The lamps are low now, oil nearly gone, their flames trembling as though they too are weary. Shadows quiver on the walls, long and crooked, yet your needle moves steady still. The overseer says little. His voice is tired, his sandals scuff softly, but he watches. You feel his eyes now and then, heavy as the eagle's own gaze, but you do not falter. The last stitches are smaller, more delicate, meant to hide raw edges and fasten loose threads. You press them down carefully, tugging gently, flattening each knot. Your fingers ache, swollen and stiff, but you push on. Each stitch is a whisper of farewell. Historians still argue whether such banners were discarded after festivals or preserved in treasuries. Some claim they were paraded until tattered, then cut apart for relics. Others insist they were stored, folded in chests, guarded as if alive. You wonder which fate awaits this one. Will it shine in sunlight before a crowd, or will it lie in darkness until moths claim it? Perhaps both are true, in different times, in different cities, with different banners stitched by hands like yours. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your mind. An old tale says that banners once carried into battle could frighten horses if their gold glinted too fiercely. You imagine soldiers cursing your stitches for blinding beasts, and the thought almost makes you laugh. Joke number 1 tonight. If war horses truly feared banners, perhaps the empire should save its armies and send only cloth. The griffin's feathers shimmer. The lion's mane glows. The saints stare solemnly. The eagle spreads vast wings. You pause to look, just once, allowing yourself the rarest indulgence of pride. This banner, for all its cost in time and body, is beautiful. It gleams even in weak lamplight. It feels alive in a way cloth should not. You know it will dazzle whoever sees it, whether noble or peasant. That knowledge is your quiet reward, though no one will say your name when they marvel. Your needle slips, pricks your finger again. A tiny bead rises, darker than silk. You wipe it quickly, muttering at your clumsiness. The cloth must remain pure, untouched. Still, you know this banner already holds part of you, hidden in threads smoothed by spit, in hours given, in blood wiped away. It is not only the empire's work, it is yours. You sigh softly, bow your head again, and continue. The water clock drips on, slower now, as though time itself has grown weary. Your body feels the same. Your back knots, your shoulders creak, your hands cramp. Yet you work. Always you work. Historians still argue whether devotion drove artisans beyond exhaustion, or whether survival alone pushed them. You feel both inside you, tangled like thread. The overseer clears his throat once more, but softer now. Even he seems subdued, humbled by the banner's finished form. The workers around you stitch slower, each one nearing their end. Silence covers the room again, not oppressive this time, but final, like the last notes of a hymn fading into still air. Joke number 2 tonight slips out under your breath. You murmur that if emperors knew how much pain sits inside these banners, they would stitch fewer and feed more. No one laughs, but a few eyes meet yours knowingly. Sometimes truth is joke enough. The eagle's talons gleam sharp, its gaze unblinking, its wings wide. You stitch the last knot into place, tugging firmly, pressing it flat. You sit back slowly, exhaling long, your body sagging with relief. The banner is finished. Finished, yet not yours. It belongs now to the empire, to the overseer, to the guild, to the emperor who will march beneath it. You remain only the ghost of labor inside its stitches. You glance once more at the griffin, the lion, the saints, the vines. You whisper a small farewell, though you do not know to whom. To the banner? To your own hours? To the threads that bound you? Joke number 3 tonight. You think that if banners could speak, this one would sigh louder than you. The overseer nods curtly, satisfied. He extinguishes one lamp, then another. Shadows deepen. The banner lies in silence, gleaming faintly, already beyond you. You set down your needle, flex your aching fingers, and rise from the stool. The work is done. You step outside into the night. The city greets you with cool air, damp with sea salt, carrying the faint cries of gulls. Church bells toll distantly, the sound rolling across rooftops. Constantinople murmurs, as it always does, restless and eternal. You breathe deeply, letting the air clear smoke from your lungs. The banner waits behind you, finished, silent, shining. You walk into the dark streets, body heavy, heart beater. The night air soothes where the lamps had burned. You walk slowly, each step easing the ache in your back, each breath loosening the knot in your chest. The city hums softly around you, but at this hour, even Constantinople seems gentler. The narrow streets curve like threads themselves, leading you away from work, toward rest. You let your fingers brush against the cool stone walls as you walk, grounding yourself in something other than silk. The bells have fallen silent now, leaving only the sea's whisper. You pause near a small courtyard, where a fountain trickles steadily. The sound of water feels like a balm, steady and patient, asking nothing of you. You sit on the edge of the stone basin, close your eyes, and let the rhythm carry you. Your body remembers the day, the hours bent, the hands cramped. But here in the quiet, they soften. Historians may argue about the fate of banners, about the power of saints, about the glory of emperors. But none of that matters to you now. What matters is the calm that steals through your body, the breath that deepens, the weight that slides from your shoulders. The banner is finished. The work is done. For tonight, at least, there is nothing more required of you. The city sleeps. The sea sighs. The stars above shimmer faintly, distant and steady. You lean back, eyes closed, letting the cool air wash over you. Threads and needles slip away, replaced by quiet, by stillness, by the simple relief of rest. And so the night carries you, slowly, gently, towards sleep.